Welcome to this free immigration help channel. Today is December 15th, 2024, and we are going to be talking about the brand new application to register permanent residence or adjust status, I-485. Now, the application itself is not brand new. It's been out for quite a while, but there has been a recent update that is going to be accepted, the October edition of the form, as of February 2025. So this is actually an update for 2025. In this video, you will find out how to fill out the application, how much it costs, where to file it, how to file it, and obviously the things that are associated. Keep in mind, this is not legal advice. I'm not an immigration attorney. All the information that is going to be provided in this video and in general on this channel are directly from official government sources. In this case, it's USCIS official website, uscis.gov. So let's start from the very beginning. Let's start from the homepage of uscis.gov. The links will be in the description below. So in order to find the form I-485, we can click on forms, and it is actually available in quick access menu right here because it's one of the most accessed forms, I-485, or you can go to all forms and you can either search within the search bar or you can scroll down. They are in alphabetic numerical order. So 485 is the number for the form. Okay, so the very first thing you will see, as it is for most of the applications and petitions on USCIS website, is that there are alerts. I would highly recommend reading through these alerts just to make sure not to miss something very important that is particular to your case. Once you're done with that, you'll scroll down, you will see the actual PDF forms and the instructions. We're gonna open both of these up, and we're not going to refer too much to the instructions in this video, but as you are filling out the form I-485 and in general whatever form that you're working with, always keep the instructions open. These PDF documents are searchable, so if you have any specific question for, let's say, something that has to do, let's say, with alien registration number, you can click Control F and you can search for alien registration number. And there you go. All of the results, all of the information that has to do with that particular keyword, with that particular word, will show up. And currently there's, in this particular case, it's just one. So here you go. Type or print your name and alien registration number, a number, if any, at the top of each. There you go, you found. So you see how easy it is. All right. Also, if the form is available to be filed online, you will see File Online button over here. At the moment, I-485 is not available to be filed online as of December 15, 2024, but I would not be surprised if that option is added sometime in the near future. If it is available to be filed online, I highly recommend filing the form online because it makes it a lot easier. In this case, you can do it. You will be filing the filled out application and all of the evidence, which we will talk about that later, by mail. And we will talk about in this video where to file it. It's all down here. But before we get into that, let's go through the application itself. I'm gonna use my usual usual example that I always use. Probably shouldn't say usual suspect for government forms and stuff, but it's John Doe who has a granted status, asylee status. He had it for a whole year, so now he's eligible to file the petition, to file the application to register his permanent residence based on granted asylum for a year. All right, that status, maintaining that status. Obviously, there's a lot of different situations, there's a lot of different immigration paths that allow for you to apply for permanent residence, such as, again, asylee, refugee, granted status, such as family reunification cases. So it will all be different. If you have any particular questions that you want to ask, drop them in the comments below and I will try to address them in a timely manner. But let's start with the application. I know it looks like it's a lot, 24 pages, but trust me, it is not that bad. It is pretty simple. Just make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you're using only black ink to write down things that you will need to write down. But I would highly recommend filling it out on the computer within the Acrobat PDF, because you can actually type stuff here and it is a lot easier to read. It's a lot easier to prevent the possible mistakes from happening compared to writing everything by hand. Yes, you can, if you don't want to deal with computers, you can print it out and fill it out completely by hand, but I would still recommend doing it like so. So let's start. Though we got part 1, information about you. Number 1 is your current legal name. Do not provide a nickname, obviously, makes sense. Given name, that's first name. So in our case, it's John. Last name, family name, Doe. Middle name, if applicable. In this case, this guy does not have a middle name, so we're gonna say N/A for not applicable. Don't leave blank spaces in this application. It is extremely important. Do not leave any blank spaces. If it's not applicable, type not applicable. In some cases you will be typing none, but I will explain why it's not a good idea to put none in middle names, because we are all foreigners, right? We have different names from all over the world. An immigration officer reviewing this application might think that the middle name is actually none, all right? And put that as a middle name. We don't want that mistake to happen. That makes it mistake proof. All right, moving further. Number 2, other names you have used since birth. Now, in this case, if you had a name change, maybe you use one name, you change the name, maybe you got married and you changed your last name. This is the situation. Let's say, for example, that was John Doe who got married and his wife's last name was Doe, so he changed it. In this case, we're going to do John, and let's say previous name was D. I put something like that, right? You get the point. If nothing is applicable, as usual, we're going to go through the whole thing. Not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. I know it does sound silly, but trust me, you want to go through this and make sure all of that is not applicable. Don't leave it blank. Date of birth, pretty straightforward. This is the format, 0101. Well, this is the format. You have month first, the day, and then the 4 digits for the year. Let's say 1970. There you go. For example, obviously you'll be putting your own date of birth. Have you ever used any other date of birth? Again, this is very, very rare situation right here, but you either say yes and you put the here, or you say no and you go through. This is the one that you can leave blank, but honestly, just to be on the safe side, as you can see, you cannot fill it out here on the computer. Make a note somewhere, either, just write it somewhere or on the phone. Once you print out the application, you will still have to sign it. Go through the whole application and fill out these blank spaces and put not applicable in them as well, just to be on the safe side. All right, you see we're already done with page 1, not too bad. Moving to the page number 2, we have part 1, still information about you. Item number 4, do you have an alien registration number? In our case, because this person has been in the United States, obviously as asylee, granted asylee, when you start an immigration proceeding, the alien registration number is assigned for everyone who starts the immigration proceedings. So that person in this case is definitely going to have the alien registration number. If you don't have it, that's fine. This is where, if you don't have it, you can put none. All right? But if you do have it, obviously you put in your alien registration number. In this case, John Doe definitely has it because they are granted asylum. So you say either yes or no. Have you ever used or been assigned any other alien registration number? We're going to say no. We're going to come back to this and put not applicable just in case. Number 6, gender, male, female. Looks like they added another gender identity, and while we are on this, not on the subject of gender, but on the subject of, looks like they added something new, this is where you can find on each page at the bottom left corner, edition. And as of right now, the most recent edition, as you can see, 10/24/24. Another place where you can check the edition is right here on the main page of the application. Click on the edition date, and there you go. Here it is. And make sure that if what you are looking at right now is different, if there is another updated form and you're looking at this video and it's older edition, make sure you're extra careful and paying attention just to make sure not to miss anything new that has been added in the newer edition, because you see sometimes they add stuff and you don't want to miss it. All right, moving further. Item number 7, place of birth. Pretty straightforward. Your city where you were born, town of birth, country of birth. Number 8, country of citizenship or nationality. Type it in. I always put Brazil as this, and obviously city, let's say Rio. Country of birth, Brazil. Country of citizenship, if it's different, obviously you put in a different one from the country of birth. USCIS online account number, if any. If you don't have any, just put none. When you are dealing with online application forms and you create USCIS online account, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes you get the online account number. If you have it, put it in. You don't have to. If you don't have it, that's fine. Just put none. Moving further, number 10, recent immigration history. All right, this is where things get a little bit more in depth. If you last entered the United States using a passport or travel document, provide the following information. Passport or travel document number used at last arrival. All right, that would be passport number or travel document number. Expiration date of this passport or travel document number. Again, make sure to use the same format that they ask you to. 2 digits for months, 2 digits for day, 4 digits for year. Country that issued this passport or travel document. Non-immigrant visa number used during most recent arrival, if any. If you had a non-immigrant visa. If you didn't, put not applicable. In this case, for example, let's say this person, John Doe from Brazil, he came in and he applied for asylum. And he came, let's say, with B1, B2 visitor visa. All right. I'm sorry, that's not a type, that's a number. So the number, it would be the visa number, whatever it is. Date non-immigrant visa was issued. Date it was issued. Place and date of last arrival into the United States. City or town. All right, so let's say you came in through New York. It's gonna be New York, and the date of last arrival. Number 11, when I last arrived in the United States, I was inspected at a port of entry and admitted as, for example, exchange visitor, visa, temporary worker. Okay, so like in our example, he came as B1, B2. So I was inspected in a port of entry and admitted as B1. You can put B1, B2. You can't fill it out on the computer. So you would have to take a note of page 2. And when you print out the form, you would have to come back and write it by yourself. So here you can either put B1, B2, or you can simply write down visitor or visitor visa. Or if you came, let's say, for example, on a humanitarian parole or something along those lines, something that is country specific, then you are paroled in. You're not admitted, you're paroled in. So it would be the second option where you were inspected at the port of entry and paroled as, for example, humanitarian parole or Cuban parole. There's another option for I came into the United States without admission or parole. And then there is, of course, the other option that you would have to describe. So basically, number 11 asks you how you came in and with which status you came in. All right, moving further, page number 3, it's still part number 1. Number 12 is if you were issued a form I-994 arrival departure record, provide information from your most recent form I-94 below. Okay, so I-94 is one of those things that a lot of people have a lot of problems because they are issued this I-94, which are now electronic, and they are unable to pull it up. I do have a video on this channel how to pull it up and what to do if you are not able to pull it up online on the official Customs and Border Protection website. Check it out. It is on this channel. If you have any follow-up questions about it, ask. Now, obviously this is going to be your information on the I-94, family name, Doe, given name John, Form I-94 arrival departure record number. All right, so that's your I-94 number. Expiration date of authorized stay shown on Form I-94. So that's when your status expires, or type or print DS for duration of status. All right. Immigration status on Form I-94, for example, class of admission or paroled, if paroled. Was your last arrival the first time you were physically present in the United States? Yes or no? Number 14 is, what is your current immigration status? So, for example, in our case, in our example case, let's say it was the first time John Doe arrived from Brazil to the United States with a B1, B2 visitor visa, all right? And since then, they have, you already know, they have now granted asylum, so they applied for the asylum when they came into the United States. So, what is your current immigration status? That would be granted asylum. Number 15, expiration date of current immigration status, or type or print DS for duration of status. All right. In this case, it's going to be DS or duration of status. So your current status and when is the expiration date, if there is. If there isn't, then duration of status. Number 16, have you ever been issued an alien crewman visa? Very specific for very specific visa. So in most of the situations, it's just going to be no. But if it's yes, then you already know. Then you're gonna select yes. Number 17, did you last arrive in the United States to join a vessel as a seaman or a crewman, or while serving in any capacity aboard a vessel or aircraft? Again, very specific. For most people, it's going to be no. But if it's yes, then there you go. You're gonna select yes. Number 18, addresses. Current U.S. physical address, and you will see that there is also mailing address. The difference is physical address is where you actually are physically residing. Mailing address is where you are actually receiving your mail. So most of the times it's going to be the same address, but of course there are some situations where, for example, you have some kind of temporary place of living, and let's say, for example, you have relatives that have been living at their address for a long time and they're not planning to move anywhere, and obviously all the important mail such as notifications from USCIS you want to receive on the address where you know that they're gonna receive it and that it's not gonna get lost. In this case, you can put your current physical address where you reside, and mailing address is where you want your mail to go. Okay, so physical address in care of, if any, so the name, in this case you can put your own name or the name in care of, let's say somebody is receiving the mail for you and then passing it along, in care of that person, which is going to be the case for mailing address. For physical address, it's just going to be your name. Street number and name. If there's apartment, suite or floor, you're gonna put it there. City or town, state, zip code. Date you first resided at this address. Is this your current mailing address? Okay, so if you say yes, that's it, no worries. If you say no, then you're gonna be expected to fill out obviously this. You're gonna fill it out was not applicable if it's not the case anyway, so you're still expected to fill it out. If you answer no, provide your current mailing address below. Here you go. And if you said if this is your current, if it's a yes, then you will go through once you print it out and put not applicable, not applicable, not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. Moving further, still information about you. Have you resided at your current address for at least 5 years? Yes or no? If you answer no, provide your prior addresses for the last 5 years. Use the space provided in part 14 additional information. I'll show you how to fill it out later when we get to it. So prior address, there's a space for one right here, as you can see. If you have more than one, then I will show you how to fill out in part 14. We will get to that. So you will fill out your prior address. All right. And then there's also same thing, obviously, in care of, street name, apartment, suite, floor number, if there are any, city or town, state, zip code, province, postal code, country. All right. If it's previous address, if let's say your prior address was outside of the United States. And dates from and to. Most recent address outside the United States. Now we're talking about the country where, let's say, you came from and the address over there. Same thing, you're filling it out from and to. Moving further to number 19, Social Security card. Has the Social Security Administration ever officially issued a Social Security card for you? If yes, you put yes and you enter your Social Security number. If not, then you put no, and once you print out the application, you come back to this and put none by hand. Do you want the SSA to issue you a Social Security card? If you never had a Social Security card, yes, absolutely, definitely you do want that, so you will have to select yes. If you answered yes, you must also answer yes to the consent of disclosure. Consent of disclosure, you're basically authorizing USCIS to disclose information from this application, your information, to Social Security Administration so that they can issue you the Social Security number. So you will select yes here as well. All right, we're done with part one. We're moving to part two. Application type or filing category. This is where things get even more important. So make sure you're definitely doing enough research specific to your particular case so that you're selecting the correct application type. And we're going to talk about in a moment. So, are you filing for adjustment of status with the Executive Office for Immigration Review, EOIR, while in removal, exclusion, rescission, or deportation proceedings? All right, so if there is some kind of proceedings that are open against you, like for example, deportation, removal proceedings, right? You're selecting yes, EOIR, it's now going through the immigration court. Hopefully that's not the case. If it's the case, you already know you're selecting yes, but if it's not the case, you're selecting no. If there's no immigration proceedings against you, like removal or deportation, you're selecting no. If yes, then you know that it is yes and you're selecting yes. Receipt number of underlying petition, if any. Okay, in this example we are using here, John Doe has granted asylum. What is the petition number? Is the receipt number of the main asylum petition that John Doe has petitioned when they filed that asylum application. You're gonna have that receipt number. That's where you're entering it. Priority date from underlying petition. The priority date is when the petition has been accepted by USCIS, and on that receipt, the initial receipt that you have received for your petition, this is the date of when they accepted your application, the receipt date. That is the priority date. That is what you're putting here. So let's say, for example, John Doe has sent that asylum petition back in 2022, December 15, 2022. This is going to be the date here, December 15, 2022. That's the date appearing on the receipt that they have received. I'm filing this form I-485 as, select only one box, principal applicant, derivative applicant. So the difference is a principal applicant. I'll give you an example. For example, let's say there's a family reunification case. A husband is petitioning for a wife, and there is also a derivative beneficiary on the petition, on the I-130 petition, that is their child under 21 years old. All right, that's considered child by USCIS, the Department of Homeland Security. If it's the child applying, derivative beneficiary. If it's the wife applying, principal applicant, principal beneficiary. All right, so hopefully that's understandable. Again, if you have any questions about this specifically, don't hesitate to ask. So, principal applicant's name, obviously, in this case, it's gonna be definitely principal applicant. If you're just yourself applying, then it's principal applicant. So principal applicant, again, same thing, give a name. not applicable. And then John Doe. Principal applicant's alien registration number. Principal applicant's date of birth. Again, if it's just you applying for yourself, applying for permanent residence, you're going to be repeating your own information here. Pretty straightforward. All right, now this is where you will need to do a little bit of research kind of yourself. This is where the instruction is going to be helpful. I'll help you navigate through it as much as I can. I'm applying based on the following category. You must select only one category. If you're filing as a derivative applicant, select the appropriate box based on the category under which the principal applicant is applying or has applied. See the Form I-485 instructions for more information, including any additional information, instructions that relate to this immigrant category you select. Okay, so as you can see, there are a few different ones. There is 3A, family-based. All right, that's family reunification cases, quite a few of them there, as you can see, but that's anything family related. If you're family related, you'll be looking in 3A. If you're employment based, you're looking in 3B. There's also special immigrants, 3C, religious workers, so far so forth. In our example, our John Doe is applying based on granted asylum for 1 year. So he will be scrolling down to 3D because that's for asylee or refugee. And you see the first one, asylee status, all right? Immigration Nationality Act, Section 208, Form I-485 or Form I-730. If you selected asylum, date you were granted asylum. Now, the reason why this date is important is because it needs to show specifically, you see how specific it is, because you're applying based on having granted asylum, John Doe in this case applying based on having granted asylum for 1 year. So this date right here needs to show that it has been at least a year that he maintained that granted asylum. So when was he granted asylum? Let's say he was granted asylum on December. I can't fill it out on the computer, so for John Doe he would have to print it out and fill it out. But let's say he had his asylum granted on December 1st, 2023, and we are in December 15, 2024. So it has been just over a year. Perfect time to file the application for permanent residence. All right, in this case, very important. There's also 3E for human trafficking victim or crime victim. There's 3F, it's like special programs based on certain public laws, and there's a few additional options such as diversity visa program, green card lottery, also known as continuous residence in the United States before way back 1972, individual born in the United States under diplomatic status as non-immigrants. So again, you will have to know where you're at currently in order to answer this correctly. You can always refer to Form I-485 instructions, instructions for Form I-485, and we're gonna type in part 2. And let's see if we can find, using the F, part 2, if it will bring us right where we need to. There we go. Part 2 application type. There. That's it. So we're going to scroll down. Let's see if we can find this so I can tell you which particular page. Interesting. Well, I guess I'll have to look deeper into that. The instructions did not seem to provide much information for that. Regardless, what you can do, if you cannot find it in the instruction, go through each one individually. Let's say if you're applying based on some kind of family reunification case, go through each one individually and you might find your answer yourself there without referring to the instructions. So for example, family base, right? Spouse of US citizen, unmarried child under 21 years of age of a US citizen, parent of a US citizen, person admitted to the United States as a fiance, widow or widower of a US citizen. So you get the point. You see, it's pretty specific. So you should know, obviously, your situation based on which you're applying for permanent residence. So you should be able to answer this correctly without the use of instructions. But again, if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments below and I'll try to get to that. Okay, moving further. Part 3. Request for exemption for intending immigrant's affidavit of support under section 213A of. So that's for the affidavit of support, if it's applicable to you. Again, I'm requesting an exemption from submitting an affidavit of support. I have earned or can receive credit for 40 qualifying quarters. I'm under 18 of age, unmarried, the child of U.S. citizen, and obviously you don't need that. I'm applying under the widow or widower of U.S. citizen. I'm applying as VAWA, self-petitioner. None of these exemptions apply to me, and I'm not required by statute to submit an affidavit of support. In our case, that's what is going to be the answer, because this person is applying based on granted asylum and they don't need an exemption. None of these exemptions apply to me, and I'm not requesting an exemption as I am required to submit an affidavit of support under section. Okay, I'm not requesting, and I'm not required. All right, let's see. So there's one where it says, and I'm not required by a statute to submit an affidavit of support, nor I am required to request an exemption, and I am not requesting an exemption as I am required to submit. Okay, so in one case, you're required to submit an affidavit of support, and you will submit an affidavit of support, but you're not requesting an exemption. In another case, in this one, which we selected, which is in our example, this is the case, is you don't even need to submit the affidavit of support. All right. Moving further to part 2, additional information about you. All right. Number 1, have you ever applied for an immigrant visa to obtain permanent resident status at a U.S. embassy or U.S. consulate abroad? All right, abroad. So if, for example, let's say it's a family reunification case, in those situations when they issue the immigrant visa I-485 stamp that once you enter the United States, it converts to a temporary permanent residence card. In those situations, you're gonna say obviously yes, if that's the situation. In our case, no, because John Doe, he came in on a non-immigrant visa, so it's going to be no. But again, it's different, so make sure you're answering correctly. If you answered yes, you will have to complete location, where the U.S. embassy, U.S. consulate is, city, town, country, decision, whether it was granted or denied, approved, refused, denied, withdrawn, date of decision. Have you previously applied for permanent residence while in the United States? If you ever previously applied for it. Have you ever held lawful permanent residence status which was later rescinded under INA section 246? Again, most likely it's going to be no, but if it's yes, then make sure you answer truthfully. Employment and educational history. Provide all of your employment and education history for the last 5 years. So we're dealing with permanent residence. That's why they're asking these questions. Again, pretty self-explanatory here. Your employer or school, name of employer or school, current or recent. Your occupation, if employed or retired, makes sense. Address of employer or school, all right, makes sense. Dates of employment, unemployment, retirement, or school attendance. If unemployed or retired, source of financial income. Provide your most recent, so there is 2 spaces for it. There's one for school, one for work. But again, if you need more spaces, I'll show you how to fill it out in part 14. Moving further to part 5, information about your parents. Parent ones, you can select whether you put your mom first or your dad. So their family, their last name, their first name, middle name if applicable. Date of at birth, if there were different names, let's say your mom changed the last name to your dad's last name, for example, that's where you're going to be entering. If it's not applicable, just put not applicable. Date of birth and country of birth. So that's all the information they need. Current name, previous name, if any, date of birth, country of birth for both parents. Pretty straightforward. Moving further to part 6, information about your marital history. What is your current marital history? They're single, never married, married, divorced, widowed, marriage annulled, legally separated. If you're married, is your spouse a current member of U.S. Armed Forces or U.S. Coast Guard? In most of the cases, it's going to be no. If it's yes, then yes. Or you can also put no if you're married, right? And if you're single and never married, then you're putting not applicable. How many times have you been married? All right, if you put 1, then you're filling out 1. If you're putting 2, then you're filling out information for the previous spouse as well. So, information about your current marriage. If you're single, like in this case John Doe is, you will go through everything and put not applicable, as usual, as per all of it, in all of the cases. Obviously, if you're married and you're putting your current spouse information here. Same thing, last name, first name, middle name, if any, alien registration number, if any, date of birth, country of birth, and the physical address. All right. Information about your marital history, place of marriage, city, state, country, date of marriage to current spouse. Is your current spouse applying with you? So are they applying for permanent residence with you? Either yes or no. Now, information about your prior marriages, if any, that is if you had any other marriages before your current marriage, this is where you're entering this information. Same thing, pretty straightforward. And then we're moving forward to your children, if any. If you don't have children, then just put no and go through everything. Child 1, child 2, and put not applicable in everything. If you have 1 child, you're filling out their information here. And then child 2, not applicable. If you have, let's say, more than 2 children, 4 children, then you're filling out child 1, child 2. And then on part 14, I'll show you how to fill out child 3, child 4. Pretty straightforward. And again, for children, it's the same information as for your spouse. Last name, first name, no middle name. Well, if there is middle name, you're putting middle name. If not, not applicable. Alien registration number, if any. If not, none. Date of birth, country of birth. What is your child's relationship to you? So, in this case, it's either biological child, stepchild, or adopted child. Got the examples here. All right, moving further. And also, yes, are these children applying with you on this I-485? If yes, yes. If no, no. All right, moving further to the part we got biographic information. Number 1 is ethnicity, Hispanic, non-Hispanic. Number 2 is race, American Indian, Asian, Black African, Native American, white, height, weight, color, eye color, hair color, pretty straightforward. Part 9 is general eligibility and inadmissibility grounds. Choose the answer that you think is correct in part 9 if you answer yes to any of the questions. Have you ever been member of, involved in, or in any way associated with any organization, association, fund, founding party, club, society, or similar group in the United States or in any other location in the world? All right. Have you ever been a member of, involved in, or in any way associated with any organization, association, fund, foundation, party, club, society, or similar group? If you answered yes, you will have to provide the information of the organization. Now, this organization can be religious organization, political organization, charity organization. There's plenty of organizations that people are a part of. Most of the times, the question is going to be yes, and then you are putting the information about this organization. Basically, they're checking for any kind of grounds for, either eligibility or inadmissibility. And if anything, that will raise some kind of red flags in their system saying, oh, this person has been part of some kind of political organization. And again, you see it's in the United States and outside of the United States. So yeah, most of the times people are, going to be part of some kind of organization, whether it's political, whether it's some kind of community organization, some kind of club, some kind of social fund, whatever. So make sure you answer as much truthfully as possible. All you need to provide is the name of organization, city, state, country, nature of organization, its purposes and activities, whether elite or legitimate, nature of involvement in organization, including role and positions held, whether illicit or legitimate, and then the dates of membership. There are places for 2 organizations here that to enter. If the answer is no, just put no, and then this you can go back and by hand fill out not applicable. All right, moving further, you have quite a few questions here. Make sure to read through all of them and answer yes or no. Have you ever been denied admission to the United States? Yes or no? Have you ever been denied a visa? Have you ever worked in the United States without authorization? Have you ever violated terms? Have you ever been issued a final order? So hopefully all of these are no, but if any of them are yes, then we will go through and fill out that information. The next thing, same thing, except now it's about criminal acts and violation. Have you ever committed any crime of any kind? Have you ever pled guilty? Have you ever been ordered punished by a judge or had conditions imposed on you? Again, hopefully all of that is no. You're going through, you're answering all of these questions. Make sure you read each question moderately careful and answer truthfully. Then we're going to security and related, engaged in any kind of violations or evades any law related to espionage, engage in any activity whose purpose include opposing, controlling, or overthrowing the U.S. government, engage in any other unlawful activity. Hopefully everything is no. You get the point. You're going through all of this, you're going through all of this, you're going through all of this. Pretty self-explanatory. Same thing with public charge. All right, if any of this applies to you, you're filling it out, make sure you read through it carefully. I'm just gonna skim through it. Okay, we're getting to number 57 now. What is the size of your household? Now we're talking about a little bit about the financial information. 56 is I'm exempt from the public charge ground of inadmissibility in case if by some reason you know there's a public charge. In our case it's going to be asylee, so we're going to select that. But again, in most of the situations you will just select I do not fall under any of the exempt categories. All right, but make sure you read through it and make sure you answer it correctly. 57. We're talking about the finances now. In some of the situations, like we've been talking about above, you do need to provide the affidavit of support, and this is where the number is going to play a role. I do have a separate video specifically whenever it comes to family-based immigration cases for the household income numbers. So if you need to do more research on that, you can check it out. There is a video on this channel. So the size of your household, obviously including yourself. Indicate your annual household income. There's the ranges here. Identify the total value of your household assets. Assets is the real estate, it's your cash on hand, it's the money in the bank, it's some kind of valuable things that's the assets. Businesses. Identify the total value of your household liabilities. That's the expenses, credit card debt, mortgage on the house. What is the highest degree or grade of school you have completed? All right. So less than high school, master's, bachelor's, self-explanatory. List your certifications, licenses, skills obtained through work experience and educational certificates. So you're listing all of that here. Have you ever received supplemental security income, temporary assistance for needy families, so forth? If it's yes, you answer yes. If it's no, you answer no. Have you ever received long-term institutionalization at government expense? If yes, then yes. If no, then no. Moving further, if you answer to the 63, then you're putting in the information about the benefits that you have been receiving. And the same thing for 64. If you answered yes, you're putting in 66 the name of the institution, the date, and the reason. All right, we're getting to yes and no questions. We're almost there. Illegal entries and other immigration violations. Yes or no questions. Go through them very carefully. Removal, unlawful presence, or illegal re-entry. Again, yes or no. Miscellaneous conduct. Do you plan to practice polygamy in the United States? Yes or no? Are you accompanying an alien who is inadmissible? Have you ever assisted in detaining, retaining, or withholding custody of a U.S. citizen? Have you ever voted in violation of any federal, state, or local constitutional provision? Have you ever renounced U.S. citizenship? Again, go through these yes or no questions and answer them. All right, we're getting to the end of the application. Part 10, applicant's contact information, certification, and signature. Pretty straightforward, nothing crazy over here, except, let's go through this. Telephone number you're putting in, your mobile phone number, email address. I recommend filling out 2 separate phone numbers just in case, and I definitely recommend putting in your email address. Your applicant's signature, obviously you're going to print it out and you sign it. Date of signature, you can fill it out on the computer. Now, you're going to see additional part 11 and part 12 for interpreter and preparer. So interpreter is going to be someone who is helping you with fill out this application. Now, I'm not an interpreter because in this case, we're talking about services. You go somewhere, you pay them money, and they help you with this application to interpret. Like, for example, translation services are going to be interpreter services. And the translator, they're going to fill that information here and the signature. Preparer, most of the times the attorney is going to put themselves here. If you're doing it all yourself, you don't have to bother with any of this, but don't leave them blank. Go through and fill not applicable in both of these. All right. Number 13, part number 13 is the signature at the interview. So you're going to leave, this is the only thing, well, one of the only thing. In the beginning, also there was a part where it's only for, where you see start here, so you start here. But this part on the top, this is one of the only things that you're going to leave blank because it is specifically for the immigration officer. And the part number 13 is specifically for your interview. So don't fill anything out here. But let's get to the very last part here, part number 14, additional information. This is where you're going to add additional children if you have more than 2 children, additional information for addresses and stuff like this. So how to fill out? Pretty straightforward. You fill out your family name, last name, first name, middle name if any. Let's say you're adding additional children. Page number. Let's see where that information is. Additional children. About your children. Okay, so page number, child 1, child 2, page number 12. So page number 12. Part number, and I know it's quite annoying, but bear with me. There you go. Part number 7. And then the item number 2, 3. So we're going to do part 7 or just 7. Item number 3, and you're adding child 3 and then their information in the same manner, in the same format as it is in the application. And that's really it. That's really it with the application. A few things to keep in mind. Not applicable, don't leave the blank spaces unless it is specific blank spaces for immigration officer or for the interview date. Make sure once you print it out, you go through the whole application, fill out the blank spaces that you couldn't fill on the computer, all right, that are not supposed to be left blank. Make sure you use black ink. Make sure what you're filling out, use the print. Don't do the handwritten, script. Make sure basically to avoid as many potential mistakes in the handwriting. That's really what I'm trying to say. We're done with that. Now, once you're done with the application, evidence, it's going to heavily depend on why you are applying based on which status you're applying. In our case, for example, John Doe, because he's applying based on granted asylum for 1 year, obviously he will have to provide information, evidence regarding his asylum case. So it's going to be the letter either from USCIS or from the immigration court showing that he was granted asylum. All right. Obviously, everyone will be providing their birth certificates, their identification documents, their whatever marriage certificates. So again, it really heavily depends on what you're applying based on. Whenever it comes to evidence, this is where you should be able to refer to the instructions. What evidence must you submit? Let's take a look and see. So I think the instructions really got worse since the last time I looked at them. Evidence. When you file your application, you must submit all evidence and supporting documents listed in the What Evidence Must You Submit with Form I-485 section of these instructions. So here we go. Page number 10. What evidence must you submit with form I-485? Okay. General rule of thumb. Again, depending on based on which status you're applying for, it will be specific to you. But for everyone who's applying for this, you have these general standards. You have photographs. You must submit 2 identical color photographs. Photos must be 2 by 2 inches. All right, so make sure these criteria is followed. Number 2, government issued identity document with photograph. Driver license, passport, whatever it is. Birth certificate. Evidence of inspection and admission or inspection and parole. That is your I-94 most of the times when you enter the United States. Form I-94 arrival departure. If you enter, for example, with some kind of, let's say you applied for asylum on the border, obviously you're going to have that information. That's what you are providing here. Documentation of your immigrant category, all right, based on which you're applying. Marriage certificate. Maintaining a lawful status since arrival in the United States. So that can be, for example, in our case, based on granted asylum, the form I-797, notice of action. So they petitioned for asylum right on time. John Doe, he didn't wait too long, and then he had his asylum granted. All right, so he maintained legal status throughout his stay in the United States. Confirmation of valid job offer. That is in case if your petition, if your application has to do with employment, if it's employment based. Report of immigration medical examination and vaccination record. I-693. Now that is I-693 is part of getting your permanent residence. Basically, you will have to find and schedule with local civil surgeon, that is a physician who is authorized by Department of Homeland Security to perform these immigration specific medical examinations. I do have a separate video on that. If you want, it's on the channel, check it out. But yes, I-693, basically you go for that medical examination, doctor fills it out, gives you sealed envelope, and then this sealed envelope you include with your application for permanent residence, and you ship the whole application package. Certified police and court records of criminal charges. That is in case if you do have any kind of criminal charges. Waiver of inadmissibility. If you are inadmissible for whatever reason, you have to send a waiver. That's the case. And then obviously you have more specific, again, documentation regarding J1, J2, again, waiver for diplomatic rights, privileges, evidence relating to public charge ground of inadmissibility. So again, this is it right here. Go through it. It's called what must you submit with form I-485, and it is on page 10 of the instructions. All right, now once you are done with that, once you have your application package, you're done with your application, you're done with your evidence. Now we need to figure out how much do we have to pay, because this stuff is not free. So filing fee, let's take a look at the fee schedule and see just how much does that cost. So here we go. Application I-485, and again I will put these links in the description below. Application to register permanent residence. General filing, $1,440. It's not cheap. I do have a video on a fee waiver, how to submit a fee waiver with an application. If you're interested, check it out. It's called, just type in the search, fee waiver, free immigration help, and the video is going to come up. Under 14, obviously different. If you're filing as an applicant who served honorably on duty in U.S. Armed Forces, it's $0. If you're a refugee or you were paroled as a refugee, it's $0. Let's see if it's for asylee. In our case, John Doe is an asylee. Let's see. Asylee or asylum. No, doesn't look like it. Does not look like it. There is any exemption for asylum. So you see, as a refugee, you don't pay anything, but if you're applying based on granted asylum, let me just granted. Nope. So if you have granted asylum case, then you are paying the general filing fee. So again, go through this fee schedule. Make sure, but the general filing, as you can see, is $1,440. All right, so we figured out how much we are paying for the application. Write out the check for the Department of Homeland Security. Let me double check to make sure. Yep, so you will be issuing your check payable to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Additionally, you can pay by credit card. If you are paying with a credit card, you will have to send additionally form G1450 authorization for credit card transaction. But it's much easier to do with a check, so I would just recommend doing the check, issuing the check and sending it. All right, so we're done with the application package, with the payment, with the evidence, with everything. The last thing is, where do we send it all? So here's the tab, where to file. We're going to click on this, and we're going to click on direct filing addresses. Again, I'll put the links in the description below. And depending on where you are, depending on based on which status you're applying, is going to be different. In our case, John Doe filing based on granted asylum. So we'll scroll down to, here you go, asylum, refugee. We're gonna click on that. And as you can see, depending on which state John Doe is located in, let's say John Doe is in Montana. Let's find Montana. No. There we go, Montana. So these are going to be the addresses for John Doe. So there is one separate address if you're sending with USCIS, with USPS, US Postal Service. There is one separate address if you're sending with a courier like FedEx, UPS, and DHL. All right, make sure you're sending to, so if you're shipping with USPS, use the correct address for USPS. If you're shipping with a courier, use the correct address for a courier. Again, make sure you're sending it to correct state. Make sure you're sending it based on correct category. And that's really it. As you can see, should take you about an hour to fill out the form itself. It does take some time to go through the evidence. Make sure you have everything nicely put together. You have your application first, you have your check. Don't staple anything. Use the, what are they called? Not the stapler, but the staples that you can easily remove. Same thing with the pictures. So you have your application, you have your check on the top of the application, you have two photographs on top of the check, and you're using not the stapler that staples everything together, but I'm an immigrant too, so sorry about that. The things that don't actually staple it together but hold it together, okay? Binders? No, not the binders. And then underneath, after the application, you are adding all the evidence, again, in the same order. If there is some kind of like for example, marriage certificate, let's say it's in a different language other than English, make sure you have attached certified translation. So you have a certified translation on top, and then the document itself on the bottom. Not original documents. Don't send original documents. Send the copies of original documents. All right. Make sure to make a copy of your application, and in fact, I would recommend having a separate folder with exactly the same everything scanned copy that you sent to the immigration services. What that will do is, once your interview is scheduled, you can open it will take some time, so you can open your application, go through it, and kind of refresh on, obviously it's all your information, so it's not like you're gonna forget something about yourself, but it's still nice to refer to the original application and know where you stand, just to kind of prepare for that interview. And I think that's really it for today. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any follow-up questions, post them in the comments below. I know it's quite a lot of information, and some of the things I went through quickly. I apologize if that's something is specific to you that I went through quickly. Don't hesitate to ask questions in the comments below, and I'll try to get to them and answer them. Thank you very much for watching. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.